She kissed my forehead like she always did. Except this time, her lips trembled just enough for me to feel it. You don't forget that kind of shake when you've been married 32 years. I looked up from my recliner and saw her standing too still at the stove, both hands wrapped around my chipped white mug like it was the last hot coal in hell. "Sit down," Claire said softly. "I'll bring it to you." The smell was right. Sumatra, medium roast, no sugar, just how I liked it. But the rim caught the light funny when she handed it over. I glanced at it. A faint, cloudy residue just inside the lip, like someone had blown baby powder into the cup. She noticed me noticing. "Try it before it cools, honey," she chirped, overdoing the smile like a bad waitress trying not to cry during a double shift. So I took a sip, let it touch my tongue, didn't swallow, then yawned, too wide, too fake, and muttered something about being tired. She exhaled, just once. Not relief, anticipation. I walked up the stairs slow, like a man who needed rest. My knee clicked. Floorboard 7 creaked like always. I counted the seconds before she pulled out her phone again. 6, 7, 8. Then the vibration buzzed on the granite. "He's out," she whispered. I closed the bedroom door but didn't lock it. Just stood behind it, listening, thinking. I've replaced the furnace 3 times. Fixed the roof twice. Wired half the basement myself. But this was going to be my final home improvement project. Before I go on, do me a small favor. Over 97% of folks listening to these stories never subscribe, even though it keeps our team going and lets us bring more like this your way. If you're one of the few who does, it means more than you know. Thanks. I opened the drawer under my old flannel pajamas. Moved the socks aside. My gloves were right where I left them. Black nitrile. I used them when working with the filter tank last fall. Claire never noticed them. I slipped them on finger by finger. Not because I was planning to do anything rash, but because I didn't want to leave fingerprints on anything I might need to carry later. Downstairs, she hummed. The same way she did when she made soup during snowstorms. Comfortable, gentle, deceitful as hell. I sat down on the bed, listening to the sound of a cork pulled from a wine bottle. Claire never drank alone. I waited. More glass clinking. Another vibration buzz. A whisper followed by laughter. He was coming. I hadn't known the full picture until tonight. But I'd suspected. Weeks ago, her perfume changed. She wore earrings on Mondays. The calendar had odd dinner reminders in code. And once, she called me Greg, her old boss. When I asked about it, she laughed. "You're getting paranoid. It's all your work." Sure, that's what it was. My work. The same job that kept her clothed and fed while she played hostess to strangers in my house. Tonight wasn't revenge. I wasn't angry. Not really. I was focused. Because there's something worse than betrayal. It's the moment they believe you'll never notice. And that moment, it ended when I saw that mug sparkle under the kitchen light. The moment I closed the bedroom door behind me, I didn't even bother turning the lights on. I didn't need to see the room. I needed to hear. The muffled squeak of the wine drawer opening downstairs. The subtle double tap of her heels shifting on the tile floor. The scratch of her nail against the stem of the glass she was pouring for him. Not me. All of it told me one thing. She wasn't just comfortable doing this. She was practiced. I sat on the edge of the bed, back straight, breathing through my nose to slow my heart. I'd expected rage. A flood of something. But what came was this eerie calm. Like my body already knew this wasn't an ambush. It was a ceremony. One she'd rehearsed a dozen times. Just never with me as the audience. Another ping. Then a low murmur. Female voice. "He's out." And then a laugh. Hers. She didn't whisper like someone afraid of getting caught. She whispered like someone enjoying the theatrics. The silence between their messages was shorter now. Coordinated. Almost giddy. I stood and walked to the closet. Slid open the top drawer where we kept our winter gloves, scarves, and the flashlight we always forget to recharge. My nitrile gloves sat beneath my old wool beanie, untouched since I resealed the crawl space under the porch. Claire didn't even know I had them. I pulled them out slow and worked them over each finger with deliberate precision, like a surgeon preparing for something clean. Then I opened the window just an inch to test the air. Cold, damp, quiet, perfect. The side of the house led directly to the detached shed I used as a tool room. Most people forget how well you can monitor a home from the outside if you know your own layout. The vents, the glass angles, the way voices carry through drywall. I slipped on my old jacket, the one with the ripped pocket Claire always said made me look a bit homeless. I pulled it tight over my chest and eased open the bedroom door again. Floorboard 7 creaked. I skipped it this time. I'd memorized the silent path years ago, in those long nights checking for leaks after storms. I stepped past the upstairs bathroom. Paused. Then the front door opened downstairs. Not loudly. Not in a rush. Just a subtle click of a man who didn't even bother knocking. I froze behind the staircase wall. Claire giggled again. "You're early," she said, voice fluttering like a bad actress in a local commercial. "Couldn't wait," the man replied. Deep voice. Confident. Shoes still on. Their footsteps moved to the kitchen. She offered him wine. Cabernet. He always hated this one. They laughed. I bit the inside of my cheek until it hurt. Not because of what they said, but because of how they said it. Like I was already a corpse they were reminiscing about. I slipped out the back, silent, 1 foot at a time, and made my way to the shed. The tablet I kept out there for tuning the garage sensors was already powered up. I tapped the motion monitoring app. Our hallway, kitchen, and den were all rigged with passive sensors from an old home security setup I never uninstalled. She never once asked why I kept them running even after the subscription lapsed. The screen lit up like a stage. They moved to the living room. Sat close. Claire touched his knee. He leaned in and kissed her neck. Right there in my house, across from the family photos she never bothered taking down. I watched without blinking. I thought of confronting her. Of screaming. Of flipping furniture and dragging this into chaos. But that's not who I am. That's not how you hold someone accountable. No, I needed her to reveal everything, to expose her own intentions. And for that, I had to stay silent just a little longer. Let her dig. Let him speak. Let the night unfold like it was supposed to, until I changed the ending. The tires barely whispered against the curb. A low, deliberate hush like someone trying not to wake a sleeping dog. Headlights off. Engine cut before the car had even come to a full stop. He'd done this before. Maybe not here, maybe not with her. But this wasn't the maneuver of a man unsure of where he was going. From the upstairs window, hidden behind the sheer curtains Claire had insisted we hang last spring, to give the room a little softness, I saw him clearly. Tall. Business casual. Not a young punk. Not some rogue affair out of desperation. No, this one had calculation in his step. He adjusted his collar like he was stepping into a hotel lobby. Not a man's front porch. In his hand, a small black gift bag. Ribboned. No tag. She opened the door before he could knock. "Hey," she whispered, and then she smiled. Wide, radiant, familiar. It was the smile she used on clients at our neighborhood charity auctions. The one that said, "Don't worry, I've already smoothed everything over." He leaned in, kissed her cheek. They exchanged no words for 5 full seconds. Just looks. Familiar. Disgustingly synced. "Did he drink it?" he asked as they slipped inside. She giggled. "Of course. Out like a rock. Didn't even finish half." "Perfect," he said, setting the bag on the foyer table like it belonged there. They moved to the kitchen and I moved to the next position upstairs. My hallway mirror, positioned days earlier at a fresh angle, now gave me the perfect reflected view of the living room. Most people think mirrors are for vanity. But if you've ever hunted rats in your own walls, you learn how to track sightlines without being seen. Claire poured 2 glasses of wine. Red. She wore the silk top I bought her 3 Christmases ago and told me was too fancy to wear at home. Apparently it wasn't too fancy for this clown. She leaned against the kitchen island, barefoot, 1 foot up on the cabinet handle like she was in a catalog ad for moral bankruptcy. He took his jacket off. The man had presence. Confident shoulders, expensive haircut, the kind of tan that doesn't come from yard work. He toasted her silently and they both drank. No hesitation. No concern. I watched his hand graze her waist as they walked to the couch. She didn't flinch. Instead, she giggled again, her real laugh this time. The one I hadn't heard in months. Not with me anyway. They sank into the cushions, hips close. She rested her head on his shoulder. I could see the faint outline of the camera's standby light blinking from the shelf opposite them. Neither noticed. "You always make this place feel cozy," he said. "That's because it's not mine," she replied. "I'm just borrowing it until the paperwork makes it official." It hit me then. They weren't just playing around. They were planning, discussing futures, trying on my home like a second skin. And my coffee? It sat untouched on the kitchen counter, still steaming slightly, but dying down. The cup she meant to kill me with. The cup I didn't drink. I turned back to the tablet in the shed. Audio feed running. Motion logs smooth. Every sound, every glance cataloged and stored. The stranger leaned in. "You sure he's not a light sleeper?" Claire laughed. "Tom? He could sleep through a train wreck if you gave him a warm meal and a thank you." I didn't blink. Didn't rage. You can't build a plan in anger. You build it in silence. Because the truth doesn't scream. It waits. The stairs in our house have a way of telling on you if you're not careful. The fifth step creaks like an old man sigh. The seventh skips a beat if you hit it too fast. I avoided them both, slow, deliberate, measured. Not hiding from them, just making sure they didn't hear me coming. From the landing, I could see them fully now. Claire and the man, her lover, her co-conspirator. Sitting together like a couple auditioning for a mattress commercial. Legs brushing. Her wine glass twirling slowly in one hand while the other rested on his knee like it belonged there. "You sure he's down?" he asked. Claire giggled. "He'll sleep through anything. Especially after that little blend I gave him." He laughed, leaned in, and kissed her on the shoulder. "You're bad." She shrugged, eyes bright. "I'm efficient." That's when it hit me. This wasn't new. This wasn't some heat-of-the-moment mistake wrapped in regret and desperation. This was practiced. A script they both knew. And that gift bag he brought? It wasn't a surprise. It was a ritual. I glanced at the shelf behind them. The camera. Small. Hidden inside a carved wooden clock Claire insisted we display because it gives the room character. Was recording. Red light steady. Audio clean. "Hope you didn't give him too much," the man said, raising his glass. "Wouldn't want any headlines tomorrow." Claire laughed, high-pitched and nervous. "Just enough to keep him limp until morning. He never finishes his coffee anyway." I gripped the banister tighter. Not from anger. From restraint. My stomach wasn't turning because I was hurt. It was hardening. Setting like concrete around the fact that this wasn't about desire. It was about disposal. They weren't cheating. They were discarding me. Like a worn-out mattress they'd finally agreed to dump. I watched her settle deeper into the couch, her fingers tapping lightly on the glass as if waiting for the sedative to kick in. "He'll never know," she whispered, more to herself than to him. That was the moment. The split second where guilt should have flared in her eyes. Didn't. She wasn't worried about what they were doing. She was confident. Confident I wouldn't wake up. Confident I wouldn't suspect. Confident I wouldn't matter. I pulled the gloves tighter over my knuckles. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning revelation. The kind of revelation that burns the pretense to ash. I stepped back into the shadow of the stairs, heart steady, breaths controlled. Every second they kept talking was another nail they drove into their own coffin. The man unwrapped something from the gift bag. A pair of keychains, our initials engraved in cheap silver. Hers and his, not mine. "Cute," she said, taking one and clipping it to her purse. "You always bring thoughtful trash." He leaned in. "Next time I'll bring real keys. To a place just for us." Claire's face softened. She looked around the room, my room, and nodded. Soon. They were building a future, on top of my grave, but they forgot to check if the corpse was still breathing. I moved like a ghost through my own home, bare feet on tile, every muscle quiet and rehearsed. I slipped through the laundry room entrance into the kitchen, staying low behind the island. The light was off, but the under-cabinet LEDs cast just enough of a glow for me to see everything. 2 mugs still on the counter. Mine, the one I'd pretended to drink from, and a second she'd poured for herself before the doorbell ever rang. She'd been smart enough not to label which cup held the sleeping aid, but not smart enough to realize I never washed mine. Not smart enough to realize I had gloves on when I set it down. And certainly not smart enough to anticipate that I'd come back and touch only the handle. I swapped them, gently, no clink, no scrape. Then I lifted the tainted mug and carried it like an offering to the front of the house. The living room was empty for now. Claire and her new shadow were still lounging in the den. I placed the mug down on the narrow table by the coat rack, right beside his blazer, visible, unassuming, a casual placement that wouldn't trigger suspicion but would invite convenience. Then I stepped back, paused, listened. Laughter, soft and rolling, with undertones of wine and nerves. She was talking about me again. Something about how I never liked movies that required thinking. He responded with a chuckle that sounded like gravel sliding across a metal tray. God, even his laugh was smug. I slipped out the side door and crept through the side path, down to the back of the property. The cold hit fast once you left the insulation of the house. Frost on the railing, wet grass underfoot, the kind of chill that wakes up old knees and older instincts. The workshop was dark but familiar, smelled of cedar and machine oil, comforting in a way the house no longer was. I flipped on the tablet and logged in to the sensor grid. Years ago, I'd installed a budget motion detection system, one of those DIY rigs meant to deter porch pirates and raccoons. But I'd never shut it off. Even when Claire rolled her eyes and called it, "your little spy game," now it was more useful than ever. 3 zones lit up instantly. Kitchen, den, hallway. Their silhouettes floated across the map like heat signatures on a predator drone feed. Claire moved to the kitchen. The outline of her hips swayed gently as she reached the counter. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see the intent. Pour another glass. Maybe refill his. Maybe sneak a sip herself. Then a pause. Her lover's shape joined hers. Another pause. A decision. The hand moved toward the coat rack. Reached. Touched the mug. A slight bend forward. He sniffed it. Then he drank. Not the whole thing, just a sip. Testing it. Then another. Motion stopped. For almost 20 seconds. Then movement again. Slower. Back to the couch. They sat. I watched the lines on the screen, his posture changing. His head leaned further back than before. His outline shifted less. Claire's shape hovered beside him. A flicker of panic? Couldn't be sure. The delay between each movement grew longer. She said something then. Couldn't hear it. But the next moment told me everything. She stood up too fast. Moved toward the window. Her hand shot to her mouth. I smiled. I didn't need poison. Didn't need to raise a hand or raise my voice. I just needed the right man to drink the wrong cup. And the right woman to realize she'd never known who she married at all. 15 minutes is longer than you think when you're watching someone's illusion crumble in real time. Inside the workshop, the only sound was the faint hum of the space heater and the occasional buzz of Claire's voice on the tablet speaker. But even her chatter was different now. Laughter thinner. Words tighter. Like a stage actress who'd suddenly forgotten her lines but was too proud to leave the stage. On screen, I watched the man, her man, shift in his seat. At first, just a subtle lean. Then a sharp twitch of his head, like someone trying to swat off a thought. Claire handed him something, more wine, maybe, or a distraction. But his hand missed the glass slightly. His fingers trembled. "What's in this?" His voice wasn't gravel now. It was cotton. Claire laughed, but it cracked halfway through. "Don't joke like that." He blinked slow. "No, really, something's off. I feel heavy." Her back straightened. It was his cup. I swear it was. And that's when panic broke the surface. Not the kind of panic you fake for attention, or the kind you pretend is about someone else's welfare. This was survival mode panic. The color drained from her face, her body stilled, and all that honeyed confidence she wore earlier began to melt. He tried to stand. His legs didn't agree. He sank back into the couch with a grunt, mouth slightly open, eyes darting like a rabbit's. From where I stood, just outside the back door, gloves on, watching through the kitchen window, I saw it all. The fear, the unraveling. Claire turned toward the hallway, probably to run upstairs, maybe to call someone, or check if I was still breathing. I opened the back door quietly and stepped inside. The floor was cold against my soles. My breath slow, even, measured. She froze mid-step when she saw me. I didn't speak, just closed the door behind me with a soft click. Her eyes darted from me to the couch, to the bag by the door, then back to me. "You're awake," she said, voice barely above a whisper. I replied, hands folded calmly in front of me, the black gloves tight against my fingers, until I saw the way my coffee sparkled. Like sugar. But I don't take sugar, do I? Her face. God, if I could have taken a picture, I would have framed it. That perfect cocktail of disbelief, terror, and dawning regret. The look of a magician who just realized the trapdoor opens the wrong way. He groaned from the couch, eyes fluttering now, limbs slack, breathing, yes, but barely upright. His arm hung off the cushion like a discarded marionette. Claire took a step back. I thought you were. I know what you thought, I interrupted. Her mouth opened, then closed again. Words failed her. Plans failed her. She was watching the script flip itself over. The man on the couch muttered something. Incoherent. His head lolled. He wasn't dying. Not even close. But he wasn't in control anymore. And control is what men like that live on. It's the currency of their existence. Strip it away and they shrink. Fast. Claire looked at me like I'd grown fangs. "Why are you wearing gloves?" she asked. I tilted my head. "You know, it's funny. You never noticed I use these every time I fix the furnace. You never cared to ask why I keep them clean, stored, folded like linen. I told you once. They're not to protect me. They're to keep from leaving anything behind." She took another step back. Toward the stairs. Toward the front door. She hadn't decided yet. Panic scrambles logic like that. "Claire," I said softly. She stopped. "I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to hurt you. But I'm not going to pretend anymore either." Her lip quivered. Was it always him? Silence. Or maybe it was just guilt so loud it drowned everything else. She turned to look at him. The man she risked everything for. Now drooling faintly onto our throw pillow. And I just stood there. Calm. Composed. Dangerous in a way she never imagined I could be. She thought I'd sleep through her betrayal. What she never considered was what would happen when I finally woke up. "You were supposed to be asleep," she whispered, barely audible above the low wheeze coming from the man crumpled on our couch. I let the words hang there for a second. Not because I needed to think. Because I wanted her to hear how they sounded. How bitter and stupid they were once they left her mouth. I said, voice quiet but sharp enough to slice the air between us. Until I noticed my coffee sparkle under the light. She blinked. Once. Twice. Her mouth opened like she had a rebuttal ready. But the words didn't arrive. Just the shallow breathing of someone who realized the exit door was behind the person she never imagined would stand in her way. "I didn't," she began. "Don't," I said, lifting one finger. Not to threaten. Just to stop the bleeding. "Don't insult what's left of either of us." Her eyes darted toward the stairs. Then toward him. He groaned. Slurred something. His eyelids fluttering like faulty window blinds. "Whatever you think this is," she tried again. "It's not." I stepped to the left and gestured behind her. The small red light blinked from the shelf across the room. Steady. Inarguable. "You didn't think I'd record my own murder?" I asked almost casually. Her head snapped toward it like it had just come alive. That clock she always said was too ugly for the mantel suddenly became the centerpiece of her undoing. "You planted that?" she hissed. "I installed it," I corrected. 6 years ago. Just after the water heater burst. You don't remember because you don't remember most of what doesn't revolve around you. And I never turned it off. "But I didn't," she started again, stepping forward. "You can't prove. He didn't. Nothing happened." I walked right past her. No hurry. No drama. Just a steady pace across the carpet we both picked out after her last tantrum in the rug store. Funny how something soft could become so incriminating. I knelt beside the couch and checked his pulse. Strong. Steady. But his eyes weren't focused. His mouth twitched like he wanted to say something clever but forgot the sentence halfway through. "Alive," I muttered. Just dazed. Probably scared now that the party favors got passed to the wrong guest. Claire didn't move. She stood there like someone frozen in a dream they were no longer controlling. The silk blouse she'd worn for him clung awkwardly now, like it wanted to peel off her in shame. "He didn't know," she said softly. "I swear. He thought it was yours." I looked up at her. "That's supposed to make me feel better?" Her lips quivered. "I didn't mean to." "You meant exactly to," I snapped, finally letting something out. Not rage. Just the truth. "You meant to silence me. Maybe just long enough to sign papers. Maybe long enough to forget I existed. You weren't hoping I'd die. You were hoping I'd disappear." She took a shaky breath. Her eyes wet, her hands twitching like she wanted to wring them, but couldn't remember how fingers worked. I stood up, fast enough to make her flinch. Then I walked toward the hallway. Not away from her, but past her. Close enough that she smelled the oil from my gloves. "I used to lie awake wondering who you were texting at night," I said. "I thought maybe I was losing you, that I could fix it, that maybe I'd been too distant, too quiet. But it wasn't that." She stayed frozen. "It wasn't distance," I said. "It was convenience. I got too easy to ignore." I turned to her then, saw it all in her face. Shame, fury, desperation, all swirling, none of it useful. "Claire," I said, "you turned our home into a crime scene. And you thought the worst thing I'd do is snore through it. The blinking red light from the shelf caught her eye again. And this time, she knew. She wasn't going to talk her way out of anything. The couch made a soft sigh as I sat down across from her, the leather dipping beneath my weight, familiar but colder than I remembered. I kept my gloves on, not for drama, just for clarity, for boundaries, the kind that said you don't get to touch me anymore, not even accidentally. She stood still by the staircase for a few seconds, one foot slightly back, like she hadn't yet decided whether to stay or bolt. But she didn't move. Her instinct to flee was at war with something else, shame, maybe. Or the realization that she didn't know what I'd planned, and running might make it worse. Sit, I said. She did, slowly, carefully, like I might explode if startled. The man was still groaning on the couch beside us, a faint mumble of protest now and then, but his limbs refused to follow orders. Good. Let him stew in his own muted conscience. He had a front-row seat to his own irrelevance. I folded my hands, fingers interlaced, the black gloves creaking softly with the motion. Then I tilted my head slightly and asked, "Who told you he was worth risking this for?" She blinked, but didn't respond. No gasp, no denial. No, what are you talking about? Just the tremor in her chin and the twitch of her throat as she swallowed her fear. The kind of silence you only hear from someone caught without a script. You planned this, I said. With him. Still nothing. Her hands gripped her knees like she was holding herself together by force. So I reached for the tablet on the side table and tapped the screen. Her voice filled the room. Just slip it in, he won't feel a thing. The words cut through the air like frost on a warm window. She jerked her head toward the sound like it had physically slapped her. Eyes wide, lips parted. For a second, she looked like she might deny it. But then her mouth collapsed in on itself. Tears welled up. Fast, thick, shameless. But not remorseful. Not once did she say, "I'm sorry." Not once did she say, "I didn't mean to." Instead, she whispered, "Please let me fix this." I studied her face. The same one I used to kiss goodnight, used to watch soften in the morning light. Now it looked like a stranger's mask stretched over the bones of someone I used to trust. "You already did," I said flatly, glancing at the shelf across the room. The camera's light blinked red. Still recording. Still patient. Like me. "You knew what you were doing," I continued. "This wasn't some wine-soaked mistake. You said the words. You stirred the cup. You watched me bring it to my lips." Her voice cracked. I didn't think it would. He said it would just make you quiet. I offered. She nodded, trembling. "Gone," I added. She didn't answer. Outside, the wind knocked gently at the window panes. Inside, the silence settled like dust after an explosion. Thick, suffocating, permanent. "You wanted me gone enough to gamble everything," I said. "This house, our name, your safety. And for what? A man who can't even hold his wine without passing out in my living room." She shook her head. Fast. "It wasn't like that. I didn't know it would go this far. But it did go this far," I said calmly. "Because you pushed it here. Because you thought I'd never see it. Never hear it. Never wake up." She sobbed now, face in her hands, shoulders shaking. The kind of messy breakdown people like her use when they realize their tricks don't work anymore. I didn't move. Didn't blink. I just kept my eyes on the camera. "You asked if you could fix it," I said, voice low. "But I think you already did." She looked up, red-eyed, confused. "Because now," I added, "I finally see you. And once you see the thing hiding behind the curtain, you don't close it again. You burn the whole stage down." The tablet was still in my hand when I opened the voice call app. No contacts. No trace. I dialed the emergency line manually, pressed speaker, and let the line connect while I stared across the room at the man slouched on my couch, mouth slack, one leg half tucked under him like he passed out mid-stride. His breathing was fine. His heartbeat would hold. But his pride, that was already gone. 911, "What's your emergency?" I didn't answer. Just said 4 words, slowly, clearly, and without emotion. "A guest fainted. Address incoming." I dropped the tablet on the table, screen still lit, and watched it send the location automatically. Then I ended the call without another word. No names. No specifics. Just a loose thread waiting for someone else to follow. When they got here, he'd be fine enough to talk. If not soon, then eventually. That was the point. Let him explain what he was doing here. Let him fumble through whatever half-truths Claire coached him to deliver. She sat hunched now on the edge of the armchair like it had grown spikes. Her eyes were bloodshot. One tear still clung to her cheek, frozen mid-descent. I turned to her. Calm. Clear. Not soft. You'll leave before they arrive. Her breath caught like a punch. What? Everything you own is already packed, I continued. Closet's empty. Suitcase is in the garage. Your keys are there too. You'll use the side door. It doesn't have a camera. She blinked like she'd forgotten how. You packed my things? I did. When? I let a small silence drag its knuckles across the floor between us. She needed to feel it. The moment you laughed, I said. About me being predictable. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. I took a step toward her. She didn't flinch this time. She just stared up like I was some myth that crawled out of the stories she told herself about how easy I was to manipulate. Your cards are disabled, I said. Bank access revoked. Subscriptions canceled. Your name's not on the utilities. You're a ghost in this house. You just didn't know it yet. She stood slowly, knees unsteady. You can't do that. I already did. You'll ruin me. I took another step closer now and saw it real fear. Not the performance she gave her lover when pretending to feel guilty. No, this was the look of a woman staring at a chessboard she used to own and realizing someone flipped it when she blinked. I leaned in just enough for her to hear the warmth drain from my voice. You did that yourself. She looked past me to the front window, as if expecting the night to offer her an escape route. But nothing was waiting. Just porch lights, wind, and the cold breath of consequences. You don't have to do this, she said. I tilted my head. You're right. She blinked, hopeful. I get to. Her hands trembled now. Where will I go? Wherever someone still believes the act. But, I raised a hand. Not to threaten. Just to end it. You put a drug in my coffee. You made jokes about my death. You called me furniture with a pulse. And you laughed. She said nothing. In the distance, faint at first, the sound of sirens. You have 4 minutes, I said. Then I shut the door behind you. She stared at me, but I wasn't her husband anymore. I was the part of her reflection she never wanted to see. She turned toward the garage, and for once she didn't look back. The sirens grew louder, folding over themselves like layers of a storm not yet arrived. Claire hovered in the foyer, coat slung over one arm, boots half-zipped, one hand trembling as she reached for the doorknob. Her other hand, useless, kept twitching toward the man on the couch, as if she still believed she could pull him upright and rewrite the night with enough lipstick and denial. He'll wake up, I said, voice like ash. He'll talk. They'll know who made the coffee. She flinched. That was the moment it registered. This wasn't just betrayal. This was exposure. And she wasn't leaving because she wanted to. She was fleeing because she had no version of this ending that kept her clean. Her eyes darted between me and the blinking camera across the room, between the man wheezing through his wine-laced sedation and the tablet glowing softly beside the clock. Every direction was a dead end. So she did the only thing she knew how to do. She ran. The door slammed harder than it needed to. Her boots slapped the walkway. The engine of a rideshare she didn't call waited down the block. Always did. He never picked her up from the front. I'd seen it twice before, out of the corner of my eye. I just hadn't known what I was seeing. Headlights swept across the hallway window as she disappeared into the night. I didn't follow. Didn't slam the door behind her. Just stood there, hands calm at my sides, watching the space she'd left behind. Empty air, loose scarf on the floor, a faint trace of her perfume that somehow smelled like rot now. The man groaned again, barely conscious. His leg twitched. His head lolled toward the back of the couch. He was irrelevant now. I walked to the coat rack, took off the gloves, finger by finger, laid them next to the mug she'd prepared for me. Still there, still full, the surface cold, no steam, just a ring around the edge where foam had died. Her little magic trick, untouched. Her plan, stillborn. The blinking light on the camera across the room flickered once more, then went dark. Footage complete. Upload initiated. Hidden server. Label insurance. I set it up months ago, back when things didn't feel wrong, just off. Before the strange silences. Before she forgot my birthday. Before she called me Greg and said it was because she'd been thinking of a sitcom. It was never about rage. Not even about heartbreak. It was about truth. Cold. Unavoidable. Truth that doesn't knock. It walks in, lays down its coat, and waits for everyone else to catch up. I finally took a breath. Not a gasp. Not a sob. Just air in my lungs for the first time in what felt like years. The man would wake. The police would ask questions. His answers would be panicked, fractured, unconvincing. He wouldn't remember much. Just enough to damn them both. I didn't care if she was caught. I only cared that she'd never see me the same way again. And more importantly, that I didn't either. I turned back toward the living room. Quiet now. Lights low. No voices. No performance. Just the sound of dawn easing in through the blinds, stretching across the floor like a clean slate. For the first time in years, the house was silent. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a guest in it.